Some names were never meant to be whispered. They were meant to echo through engines and open highways. These are the stories of the men who ruled from the shadows, feared, respected, and remembered long after they were gone. Outlaws, enforcers, legends. This isn't just one story. This is the road they all built. First up, the story of a man whose name still echoes on every highway.
The Outlaw motorcycle gang.
Outlaw bikers that were walking down the street.
Is a member of an outlaw motorcycle gang.
As outlaw motorcycle gang member.
Ferocious and uncompromising 1%er clubs, they have earned both the respect and envy of rival biker gangs. When you think of outlaw motorcycle clubs, the notorious Hells Angels may come to mind. But there is one club that truly embodies the essence of the word outlaw. A club that is known for treating their women as possessions and capitalizing on them. So how did these savage bikers establish their dominance amidst other biker clubs, who are just as ruthless and lawless as them? Are they more powerful than the Hells Angels? And is their alleged practice of exploiting their wives for profit truly a lucrative venture? The Outlaws Motorcycle Club, one of the most feared motorcycle clubs in the world, is born in 1935 in Matilda's Bar on the old Route 66 in McCook, Illinois. At first, they are called the McCook Outlaws Motorcycle Club, and they are not part of the 1% group. That comes much later. As with many clubs, the Outlaws' membership dwindles during World War II, as many are lost to the brutal war. After the war ends, to bring back some enthusiasm, the club decides to hold a post-war event at Soldier Field in Chicago in 1946. As their numbers start to grow, the Outlaws have to regroup, regather, and rethink. At this point, they still treat their women well. Next, something happens that will change the Outlaws' image forever. So, during the mid-1950s, the Outlaws move from McCook to Chicago. During this move, the bikers also decide to change their image and name. From that point on, they are no longer called the McCook Outlaws, but the Chicago Outlaws. The image of the winged motorcycle and old English-style lettering of the club logo is also replaced by a small skull, and a tougher image is adopted. However, things begin to change in the 1950s, and in 1960, they earn a reputation of being a dangerous group of individuals you don't want to mess with. Even the American Motorcycle Association tries to ban the word outlaw from appearing on any race clothing at its events. But the club members simply get around the ban by wearing an OMC on their outfits instead. They relish in their outlaw status and are not afraid to tell the world who they are. The Outlaws expand their territory even more, forcing other clubs to take notice. On July 4, 1964, the Outlaws acquire the Milwaukee Gypsy Outlaws and the Louisville Gypsy Outlaws. From this pivotal moment onward, the Chicago Outlaws transcend their origins of their hometown, as the club confidently assumes the name The Outlaws, leaving no room for doubt and resolutely embodying the very epitome of the term. In this new era, the stronghold in Chicago becomes the mother chapter. With the new chapters on board, the hunger for expansion is even greater, and they are treating their women differently.
Now in 1967, the Outlaws then went on to Florida and started a chapter there. I can already tell you that when I researched this chapter of the Outlaws, I was shocked how some of their members treat their women. Especially this guy called Joe Spaziano, aka Crazy Joe. We will get to this later, but he really is the epitome of the famous Outlaws MC saying, "God forgives, outlaws don't."
In 1977, the Outlaws reach a global stage with their first international chapter in Canada, where the chapters of the Satan's Choice patch over their logo to become part of the Outlaws. But they don't stop there. They want more. They want Europe. And so they get it. In 1993, the European movement starts in France in 1993. Soon, it isn't long before other countries get on the Outlaws train, with Belgium, the UK, Germany, Sweden, Italy, Poland, Russia, and Norway joining their forces too. The Outlaws have 1,700 members, 176 chapters spread across the United States and 12 foreign countries, including those in Europe, plus Australia, Japan, Norway, and Russia. The empire of the Outlaws MC is an embodiment of the American quest for freedom and finds resonance around the world. But the outlaws are not the only ones who strive for freedom, fame, and power. Anyone who decides to move outside the law must expect to be confronted not only by the police, but also by other lawless clubs. Outlaws versus Hells Angels, the brutal battle for biker supremacy. In 1969, the wife of an American Hells Angel is rumored to be attacked by an outlaw. Furious at what has happened to his wife, the leader of the Hells Angels initiates revenge against the outlaw member and beats him till he is almost dead. In retaliation, 3 Hells Angels are killed and dumped in a nearby quarry in Florida, sparking off a decades-long feud between these two clubs, which spreads all across the globe as more chapters are formed over time. Fast forward to 1987, both British wings of their respective clubs want to hold annual get-togethers, but need a suitable venue for it. Enter Long Marston Airfield, an isolated site outside Stratford-upon-Avon in Warwickshire, which is now famously known as home to Bulldog Bash, Britain's biggest biker festival. However, things don't go according to plan, as the Coventry and Warwickshire chapter from the Outlaws feels like it is on their turf, and resentment begins brewing amongst them yet again. This leads to an unexpected attack back in 1998, when 40 Hells Angels attack allies of the Outlaws called Outcasts at Rockers' reunion gathering in London, which leaves 2 people dead. Ronald Gut Waite, vice president of the Essex chapter, ends up being jailed for 15 years, as he is found guilty of conspiring grievous bodily harm during that attack. Adding fuel to fire, that same year also sees threats from outlaws threatening bomb attacks on Bulldog Bash if they don't leave peacefully. In 2000, it gets even worse when Coventry Outlaws become official affiliates with the American Outlaw Association, which further increases tension among the rival groups. In August 2001, it is a hot and tense month in the biker world. The Hells Angels and Outlaws have been feuding for decades, but tensions have been rising as their rivalry seems to have no end in sight. It all comes to a head when a Hells Angel is shot 3 times while leaving the Bulldog Bash. Characteristically, he refuses to make any statement to the police, which only fuels speculation about what will happen next. So in 2007, it is a sweltering summer Sunday afternoon on the motorway when Jerry Tobin's life comes to an abrupt end. The 35-year-old biker is riding back from the Bulldog Bash, an annual event for motorcycle enthusiasts, when tragedy strikes. Bullet holes are discovered in his leathers, and it becomes clear that he has been gunned down by rivals of his gang, the Outlaws. The suspect was Sean Creighton, and when he finally appeared before court, charged with Jerry Tobin's murder, it initially seemed as though he was willing to take full responsibility for what happened, essentially taking the rap for everyone involved. However, this plan did not work out as intended, and 6 other men ended up being convicted alongside him too. Some people even say he ratted them out. This cold-blooded killing sent shockwaves across the global biking community, with many believing that this was a signal that war between rival gangs would ensue. Sure enough, soon after this attack, there were reports of violence erupting all over Europe, most notably an assault on an Outlaws clubhouse in Scandinavia, which resulted in 1 death. In Britain, too, there were numerous retaliations against Hells Angels.
Outlaw motorcycle clubs fighting each other is nothing new. But, as we mentioned earlier, the Outlaws stand out among the biker clubs in the way they treat their women. For some, they are absolute men of honor. For others, they are ruthless pimps. We'll let you decide. The story of Crazy Joe is in any case unparalleled and shocked myself.
The life of an old lady outlaw. Within the tumultuous realm of outlaw motorcycle clubs, a distinct narrative unfolds: the life of an old lady outlaw. These clubs, predominantly governed by tough, burly men who have triumphed over hardships, relegate women to a secondary status. Women residing in this testosterone-fueled world recognize that earning respect requires them to exhibit submissiveness and develop an unyielding resilience against sexist attitudes. In the context of this environment, the phrase "old lady knows her place" holds diverse meanings for women. While some perceive it as a compliment, acknowledging their understanding of club dynamics and unspoken rules, they are also acutely aware of the risks associated with speaking out of turn. These women tread cautiously, conscious of the potential conflicts and consequences their voices might invoke. Despite the complexities and challenges, certain women manage to carve out spaces of respect within the club. They defy the traditional expectations imposed upon them, showcasing strength and determination. However, not all women are fortunate enough to garner recognition. Many remain overshadowed, their opinions disregarded, and their voices silenced by the prevailing norms. Accompanying their partners to events or guests at home, women bear the weight of an unspoken expectation, to be seen but not heard. Breaking this rule is viewed as taboo, disrupting the power dynamics meticulously woven within the club's fabric. Submissiveness becomes a societal obligation, as women sacrifice their own aspirations and needs to preserve their partner's reputation and maintain group harmony. Regrettably, the status of women as secondary figures renders them vulnerable to assault and mistreatment. Domestic violence, a grim reality, thrives within these circles, often concealed by fear and the belief that it should remain an internal matter. As a result, many women suffer in silence, deprived of the support and resources needed to escape abusive situations. Tragically, some women find themselves trapped in the clutches of human trafficking, a harrowing ordeal imposed upon them by the club. Forced into the dark underbelly of the prostitution world, they are compelled to generate profits for the organization. Refusing compliance places their lives at grave risk, presenting a terrifying predicament where resistance becomes a perilous act. These women bear the weight of not only surviving but also concealing their experiences, as speaking out threatens the code of loyalty and secrecy that pervades the club's culture. Property of Crazy Joe, the testimonies of a witness. What would you do if you lived with a convicted killer like Joseph Crazy Joe Spaziano? One woman knows all too well the depths of this madman's antics. Her name is Darcy Faust. Darcy witnessed the erratic behavior of the man. He was nothing like a victim of injustice described by his lawyer who is trying to free him from the death row. Crazy Joe was convicted of murder in the 70s. Now, fellow biker brothers, we need to have a little chat. YouTube's got us on a tight leash with their uptight guidelines, constantly slapping restrictions on our videos. But no worries, folks. We've launched our exclusive Patreon, where we let loose and unleash the unfiltered, explicit versions of our content. If you're down to support our channel, swing by and join the crew. No rules, just pure freedom. Darcy would recount the ways in which Spaziano would pace the hallway up and down at night, would disappear frequently, and was always paranoid about being executed. On one occasion, he came home a bloody mess. Faust was involved with Crazy Joe and the Outlaws. She is aware of the many crimes that Spaziano committed. The Spaziano murder trial in the 1970s brought out the key witnesses, who were previous members of the Outlaws. They all claimed the same thing: he was a brute and a murderer. Although initially charmed by Spaziano, it was not long before she would know who he really was. Faust offered her a place to stay. As soon as she was in his clutches, he showed his true self, and she was forced into the life of the Outlaws. Wherever motorcycle clubs exist, violence is bound to happen. And in all the years that we have graced these all-powerful clubs, there has never been more disastrous biker wars than these. Picture tens of people dead, millions of dollars of property destroyed, and the endless trauma caused to civilians caught up between the guns of these clubs. Believe us when we tell you that what you're about to watch is a blood-soaked tale of the most deadly biker wars ever witnessed. Brace yourselves.
Within the sleepy and peaceful nation of Canada, a war rages on. Two groups, the Hells Angels and the Outlaws, battle for supremacy, causing a stir in the criminal underworld in Canada. Yves Apache Trudeau, a top hitman for the Hells Angels, leads the charge against the Outlaws in this violent conflict. The Outlaws are no match for the mighty Hells Angels, who overpower them at every turn. Defeated and depleted, the Outlaws retreat to Ontario, where they have a slight advantage. Meanwhile, the Laval chapter, a branch of the Hells Angels, led by Yves Trudeau, plays a pivotal role in driving the Outlaws out of Quebec. But the Laval chapter has its own problems, with many members struggling with drug addiction and violating club rules. As a result of their aggressive tactics, they also find themselves targeted by the police, who harass them and bring unwanted attention to the chapter. The bosses of the Hells Angels begin to fear for their reputation, and the police attention pressures the Hells Angels, who ultimately decide the Laval chapter has outlived its usefulness. They decide to destroy the Laval chapter, one of their own. Under the guise of a meeting to discuss problems in a Hells Angels clubhouse in Lennoxville, the Canadian Hells Angels bosses order the Laval chapter to attend. Yves Trudeau, however, has checked himself into a detox clinic a week prior and is unable to attend. The members of the Laval chapter who show up expect to be congratulated. Instead, they fall into a deadly trap. While a few survive the ambush, the majority are mercilessly wiped out. This brutal incident is still remembered as the Lennoxville purge. In the aftermath, Yves Trudeau, the #1 hitman of the Hells Angels and part of the Laval chapter, feels betrayed and chooses to cooperate with the police. His cooperation leads to the arrest of 39 Hells Angels members, a staggering blow to the notorious criminal organization. But there is one man who, despite the Lennoxville purge, or rather because of it, wants to join the Hells Angels. As it turns out, he will not only join them, but lead them into their next war. Maurice Boucher is born in 1953 into a family far from perfect. His alcoholic father is a violent man who terrorizes his family while his mother struggles to keep them together. Maurice has 7 siblings, and his childhood is anything but idyllic. His mother is his rock, while his father is the cause of endless pain and suffering. Maurice's life takes a sharp turn when he drops out of school in the 9th grade. By then, he is already addicted to drugs, and he finds himself on a dark path that will lead him to a life of crime. He tries to work on a construction site, but he is fired after just 1 week due to his addiction. From there, his criminal career takes off. At the age of 19, he commits his first robbery, stealing $300 from a store. This is just the beginning, and he goes on to break into 3 more properties. However, the law catches up with him soon enough, and he is sent to prison for 6 months. It is just the first of many times that he will be in and out of prison. But there are moments of hope in his life too. After his release from prison, he manages to find a job in a factory, and for 4 years he tries to live a straight life. But his past catches up with him, and he finds himself drawn into the world of motorcycle gangs. He meets Salvatore Cassetta, a man who becomes his close friend and is also a leader in a biker club. At the same time, the war between the Outlaws and the Hells Angels is heating up. The Hells Angels are trying to establish a foothold in Canada, and Boucher and Cassetta are on their radar. But fate has other plans for Boucher. He is arrested again, this time for a sex offense with a minor, and he is sentenced to 40 months in prison. While he is behind bars, the Lennoxville purge takes place. The brutal massacre will forever change the biker scene in Canada. Salvatore Cassetta is appalled by the Hells Angels' actions and decides to go his own way, rather than joining them. With this, the Rock Machine Nomads are born, led by Salvatore Cassetta and his brother. Boucher, however, has a completely different view of these events. He agrees with the way the Hells Angels act. He has long admired the Hells Angels for their brutal tactics and brotherhood. When they offer him a place among their ranks, he jumps at the chance. Boucher becomes a fully fledged member of the Hells Angels in 1986 and quickly rises through the ranks. Yves Trudeau cooperates with the police after the Lennoxville incident, and 2 of the Hells Angels' most powerful bosses are now on the run. One is arrested while the other is able to flee to Morocco. The 2 bosses are therefore no longer in power, leaving a huge power vacuum. Maurice Boucher can simply win people over with his charisma, and so he gets to a leadership position pretty quickly. When he learns that a rival gangster is at a bar, he brazenly walks in and shoots him. The incident proves fatal, but despite being unmasked, the police are unable to find any witnesses willing to testify against him. As the Hells Angels reorganize after several high-profile arrests, a man named Walter Stadnik rises to become national president of the organization. Stadnik recognizes Boucher's ruthless leadership potential and quickly puts him in charge of the Montreal chapter. It's during this time that Boucher earns the nickname Mom, as he micromanages his followers, making sure every detail of their assignments has been thought through. Boucher's ambition doesn't stop there. He still sees the Outlaws as a threat to his control of Quebec and becomes determined to wipe them out once and for all. With his cunning and ruthless tactics, Boucher sets his sights on achieving ultimate power. His first move is a brutal one, a bomb that obliterates the outlaw clubhouse and sends a clear message: the Hells Angels mean business. But the aftermath of the bombing takes an unexpected turn when the president of the Danville Outlaws contacts Boucher, offering to join forces with the Hells Angels. It's a tempting offer, but Boucher sees an opportunity for even greater power. He declines the offer, instead convincing the Outlaws' rocker to remain in his position and provide the Hells Angels with critical information about his former comrades. Thanks to this newfound inside information, the Hells Angels are able to launch attack after devastating attack against the Outlaws, gradually whittling down their numbers. At their lowest point, the Outlaws are reduced to a mere 10 members, and they finally make the decision to completely retreat, leaving Quebec to the Hells Angels. But are the Hells Angels now really untouchable? With two strong leadership figures like Stadnik and Boucher, who dares to mess with them? With their rivals vanquished, the Hells Angels stand triumphant as the undisputed kings of the Quebec biker scene. Boucher's bold tactics have paid off, but he knows that maintaining his power will require even greater ruthlessness in the years to come. The Mafia also appoints the Hells Angels as one of their most important business partners. In the dark and shadowy world of organized crime, power is everything. And in Canada, the Rizzuto family is the most powerful criminal organization, holding sway over almost all the street gangs in the country. With their international connections spanning across New York, Sicily, and Colombia, the Rizzutos control the drug trade, deciding who is allowed to distribute narcotics in Canada. And one of their biggest buyers? The Hells Angels. The Rizzuto family has a vast network which extends from the construction industry to politics and even law enforcement agencies. Judges and police officers are on their payroll, ensuring their influence reaches every corner of Quebec. At the center of this criminal empire is now Maurice Boucher. Rising to become one of the most powerful men in Quebec, Boucher and the Hells Angels are making millions every month through their partnership with the Mafia. But despite their success, there is one rival gang that constantly threatens Boucher's hold on power: the Rock Machine Nomads. With their own sizable network, the Rock Machine are equally active in the drug trade, spreading their influence to restaurants, nightclubs, and other businesses. But Boucher simply cannot do anything against them, because the leader of the Rock Machine is his old friend Salvatore Cassetta, who also has powerful friends. A high-ranking Mafia member is on Cassetta's side. He seemed untouchable until in 1994, when Cassetta is arrested by the police with a massive stash of drugs, providing a unique opportunity for Boucher to strike. He sends his men to the various shops of the Rock Machine, offering them a choice: either sell only the dope he gives them, or face the consequences. This ultimatum is not just aimed at the Rock Machine, but at all criminal organizations in the city. Either buy from the Hells Angels, or pay the price. The Rock Machine MC refused to submit to the Hells Angels' dominance and begin to search for allies. They find them in the form of street gangs like the Pelletier clan and secret businessmen involved in the narcotics trade, like the Dark Circle. Together, they hatch a plan to take down the Hells Angels. The street gangs and rockers are willing to fight on the front lines, while the Dark Circle provides financial support for the cause. It is a risky and dangerous endeavor, but they are willing to risk it all for the chance to topple the Hells Angels' stranglehold on the criminal underworld of Montreal. This is a turning point in the city's criminal history, and one that will have far-reaching consequences for years to come. The Rocker War in Quebec officially starts on July 13, 1993, as the Rock Machine Nomads launch their first attack. 3 of their members arrive at a business owned by a Hells Angels and take him out. The next day, they shoot another Hells Angels member, who survives the incident but is rushed to the hospital. The police soon catch wind that the Rockers are planning to blow up a Hells Angels clubhouse and arrest 5 Nomad members. In response, the Hells Angels bosses hold a meeting and decide to declare war. And so, the madness begins. Bombs are used, and shootings take place in broad daylight. Each action is immediately followed by a revenge attack. On October 28, the Hells Angels are able to take out the leader of the Pelletier clan, adding fuel to the already raging fire. His brother then assumes control and seeks personal revenge against the Hells Angels leader, Boucher. The plan involves parking a truck loaded with explosives in front of Boucher's favorite restaurant, with the intent of causing devastating damage. However, a police officer inadvertently foils the plan by noticing that the truck is not authorized to be on the road. As the conflict rages on, both sides suffer numerous casualties, and the situation becomes increasingly challenging for the police. With most of the rockers refusing to cooperate with the authorities, solving many of the cases proves to be an uphill battle. Moreover, corruption within the police force only adds to their difficulties. But in 1995, a crucial breakthrough occurs. The police find someone who will become a key player in the investigation, Danny Kane, a Hells Angels hangaround. Kane had been trying to become a full-patched member of the Hells Angels for some time, but he had only been given the dirty work. His eventual breakthrough came when he was tasked with leading the Demon Keepers, a newly formed rocker club of the Hells Angels, but they were quickly busted by the police. Kane felt used and betrayed by the Hells Angels and decided to cooperate with investigators. He provided valuable information about the Hells Angels operations, as well as information about the Mafia in Montreal. Kane also revealed that the Montreal and Quebec police were largely on Maurice Boucher's payroll. After his statements, Kane then returns to the streets and begins his work as an informer. But things escalate to a higher level. A drug dealer with ties to the Hells Angels is killed when his car is blown up. Tragically, an 11-year-old boy playing in a nearby park is also hit and dies 4 days later. The public is outraged, demanding action be taken against the biker gangs. However, the corrupt police force poses a major obstacle to justice. Even if a Hells Angels member is arrested, judges and juries are often bribed, rendering convictions impossible. Despite this, Operation Wolverine is launched with the aim of ending the biker war once and for all. Investigator André Bouchard leads the charge, determined to bring justice to the victims and their families. With prior experience investigating biker gangs, having worked on the Outlaws MC case, and intimate knowledge of Maurice Boucher from previous investigations, Bouchard is a valuable asset to the team. However, he is not alone in his quest for justice, as other investigators join him, refusing to be intimidated by the bikers. Together, they work tirelessly to bring an end to the violence and hold those responsible accountable for their actions. As Bouchard continues his investigation into the Hells Angels, he becomes a thorn in the side of Maurice Boucher, the notorious leader of the gang. Boucher decides to take matters into his own hands and provoke Bouchard by holding meetings in his favorite cafe, which is then filled with Hells Angels. But Bouchard doesn't back down and continues to show up with a table full of police officers, leading to intense stare-downs between the two groups. However, Boucher soon learns from one of his bribed officers that there is a rat in his ranks. He forms a small elite group called the Nomads to find out who the traitor is. Meanwhile, Bouchard becomes convinced that some of his colleagues are on the take and decides to leave Operation Wolverine. In the meantime, the informant Kane is given a dangerous mission to take out a member of Hells Angels. This target had landed on the hit list after getting into a bar fight with a Mafia member. But as Kane sets out to complete the task, the search for the rat within the Hells Angels organization intensifies. Suspicion turns to a man named Steinert, who had recently won a court case, surprisingly. But as the pressure mounts, Steinert starts to suspect Kane, who is the actual informant. In order to pull his head out of the noose, Kane devises a cunning plan. He uses his position in the police to manipulate them into seizing a shipment, and then intentionally frames Steinert for the crime. This maneuver creates an atmosphere of distrust and suspicion within the group, as Steinert was suspected of being the rat. To make matters worse, Kane accuses Steinert and the other rocker involved in the altercation with the Mafia, causing them to become targets. Eventually, both the rocker and Steinert are found dead, and it seems that Kane has successfully covered his tracks. But Boucher remains convinced that there are more informants among them, and he decides to take drastic action, drawing up a hit list of names of authorities. The first two targets are prison guards who get assassinated by members of the Hells Angels nomads immediately. The city of Quebec is once again thrown into chaos and fear at the brazen violence. Boucher opens his own operation called Harm after those incidents to find the killers of the officers. They conduct countless raids and make countless arrests. They get one to talk who reveals one of the assassins. His name is Stefan Gagne. Gagne confesses everything and also gives the name of his accomplices. One of them flees to Mexico, while the other is found dead. The most important thing is that Gagne agrees to identify Boucher as the client. On the 18th of December 1997, Maurice Boucher therefore gets arrested. A year later, the trial opens, but things turn out differently than expected. The judge acts in Boucher's interest, even though he is known for being one of the toughest. He believes Boucher and his team of lawyers, and Maurice Boucher is acquitted. With that, Maurice Boucher becomes a free man again, and seems untouchable. He is also almost winning the war against the Rock Machine nomads. A member of the Dark Circle decides to switch sides and betrays many of its members who were financial backers, which results in Dark Circle members being eliminated in favor of Boucher. Some members opt to surrender to the police and serve time in prison. Boucher likely seeks to weaken the opposing Mafia and gain sole power. Then, a Hells Angels member turned informant reveals that Boucher is behind a murder of a man doing business with the Mafia. As a result, 11 people close to the Mafia and Hells Angels are taken out. A journalist covering the case is also shot after accusing Boucher of being the client. Fortunately, he survives the attack. The incident sparks riots calling for stricter laws. Vito Rizzuto, the Mafia godfather, is not thrilled with the whole situation as it brings a lot of attention to his business in the underworld. His frustration boils over. He knows he must take action, and so he threatens the Hells Angels and the Rock Machine. Vito tells them that he will stop the deliveries if they do not put an end to their war. The tension is high, and the stakes are even higher. Soon after, a meeting is called between Maurice Boucher, the leader of the Hells Angels, and the Rock Machine nomad's boss. Vito watches on as the two men shake hands, hoping that this marks the end of the conflict and the profitable underworld business can continue. However, the story takes a turn when Boucher arrests Boucher again. This time, the case is retried, despite Boucher being acquitted at the time. The authorities classify the case in such a way that the Hells Angels had intimidated the jury during the first trial. This new trial is an impactful occasion, and everyone is on edge. In the end, Boucher is found guilty, and he is given a life sentence. The room is silent, and everyone knows that the verdict will have consequences for years to come. As time passes, Boucher faces many challenges in prison. He is attacked multiple times, and the Hells Angels even kick him out of their club. It is a harsh reality for someone who was once so powerful. But justice has been served, and the world is a safer place because of it.
From the riveting story of the deadliest Hells Angels war ever, we dive into their history, uncovering the turmoil of the most deadly biker wars. This is a clash between rebellious motorcycle groups, with the Hells Angels caught in what history will call the most violent biker war.
In the Canadian underworld, a race for supremacy begins in which the most ruthless will win. Two of the most powerful and notorious motorcycle clubs in the world, the Outlaws and the Hells Angels, wage war over Montreal. A battle rages on for close to 10 years, culminating in the loss of 62 lives and instilling fear and terror in the hearts of Canadians. The Outlaws, known for their brutal tactics and ruthlessness, have their sights set on the Satan's Choice Motorcycle Club, a formidable Canadian club that has been around for over a decade. The Outlaws, an American club, see an opportunity to expand their empire into Canada and decide to absorb the Satan's Choice MC into their club. Meanwhile, the Hells Angels have their eyes on an even bigger prize. The Popeye Moto Club has been on their radar for years. The Hells Angels are determined to take over the club and extend their influence across the country. Finally, in December of 1977, the Hells Angels achieve their goal and officially take over the Popeye Moto Club. It's a big victory for the Angels, and a clear sign that they are a force to be reckoned with in the Canadian biker scene. The First Canadian Biker War begins to escalate in February of 1978, when the Outlaws establish their second Quebec chapter by taking over the Montreal Rockers MC. The Hells Angels are not going to let this challenge go unanswered. On a February night in 1978, a Hells Angels member named Yves Apache Trudeau, a man who will go down in the Hells Angels Hall of Fame, makes his move. He approaches a group of Outlaws members and, without warning, pulls out a gun and opens fire. One member is killed instantly, and another is critically injured. This brutal act of violence marks the beginning of a full-blown war between the two groups in the province. But the Hells Angels do not hesitate to use even more drastic means. Before the Outlaws can fight back, the Hells Angels attack again, this time directly the leader of the gang. The Angels plant a bomb under his car, with little regard for innocent bystanders who may be caught in the crossfire. The Outlaws are hit hard. Their leader is dead, and his closest confidants are injured. The gang is in shock, and at first cannot seem to defend themselves against the ferocity of the opposing Hells Angels, especially when they are attacked on 3 consecutive days in April 1978. On the first day, they storm the Outlaw clubhouse, injuring several members. The violence continues on the second day, with another Outlaw member being brutally murdered. On the third day, a Hells Angel opens fire on an Outlaw and his girlfriend at a local bar, leaving them both critically injured. The city is in a state of shock, and people are starting to fear for their safety. The Outlaws manage to launch a small counterattack, shooting a Hells Angel during a drive-by shooting. However, this is only the beginning. The Hells Angels have earned great respect and caused a stir with their brutal takeover of the Canadian underworld. Smaller motorcycle clubs like the Wild Ones MC decide to join forces with them, and Walter Stadnik, the leader of the Wild Ones at the time, arranges a meeting with Hells Angels leader Yves Buteau to discuss a patchover. Unbeknownst to them, the Outlaws are watching the meeting closely. The diplomatic meeting between allies ends in a bloody event known today as the Le Tourbillon massacre. In a cafe, the Hells Angels and the Wild Ones strategize the potential alliance until chaos erupts. 2 Outlaws, equipped with a sawn-off shotgun and a pistol, start blasting bullets at the opposing bikers. The unsuspecting bikers in the cafe are not able to defend themselves. The once peaceful cafe now resembles a bloodbath, with bullet-riddled walls and blood-stained floors. 2 members of the Wild Ones MC and 1 Hells Angel are dead, several others injured. Amid the carnage, Walter Stadnik manages to evade the gunmen by hiding under a table. The Outlaws have now scored their first real counterattack. The Tourbillon massacre is a painful stab at the supremacy of the Hells Angels. The Hells Angel bosses then set their #1 assassin, Yves Apache Trudeau, to track down and kill the person who ordered this massacre. But the Outlaws continue their counterattacks in the meantime. They simply cannot allow a union of Wild Ones and Hells Angels. They therefore focus on the smaller Wild Ones MC and make it their main goal to eliminate this small but vital biker club. The Wild Ones are not able to defend themselves against the superior Outlaws who kill one biker after the other, no matter if with firearms or bombs. When Walter Stadnik then one day returns to the hometown of the Wild Ones, he no longer finds a club. The Wild Ones are history, and Stadnik stands alone. He therefore joins the Hells Angel on his own and comes to play a leading role in the future. Currently, 1 Hells Angel is particularly outstanding in ensuring that the Hells Angels remain in control. Yves Apache Trudeau shoots the former boss of the Outlaws and then also gets the man behind the Tourbillon massacre, Roland Dutemple. Trudeau places a bomb under Dutemple's car and blows it up when he gets in. He then kills another outlaw in cold blood on the street. Trudeau by himself is a force to be reckoned with. His influence on the battle between Hells Angels and Outlaws is crucial. Together with Yves Le Boss Buteau and another Hells Angel, he even kills an outlaw and his girlfriend by blowing up his motorcycle. This particularly unruly group around Trudeau is granted authorization by the Montreal chapter to establish the Montreal North chapter based in Laval. It's predominantly composed of former Popeyes known for their violent and drug-fueled conduct, a pivotal decision. In contrast, the Montreal South chapter, led by Réjean Zig Zig Lessard, consists of more disciplined members who joined after 1977. The North chapter's notoriety for their reckless behavior and violent tendencies ultimately culminated in a massive inner conflict. Yves Trudeau was even forced to kill a member of his own chapter, as he was heavily drug addicted and had conspired to kidnap the kids of one of the Hells Angels cocaine dealers. The fight against the Outlaws finally costs the life of Yves Buteau, the current president of the Canadian Hells Angels. After a visit to a cafe, he smokes a cigarette with a fellow member. Then he is hit by the bullets of a .38 caliber pistol. The gunman is Gino Goudreau, an outlaw prospect who wants to finally earn full member status by murdering a Hells Angel. Over 2,000 supporters and 150 Hells Angels from Canada, the United States, England, and other locations join the funeral ride of Yves Buteau, which covers a distance of approximately 40 miles from Sorel to Drummondville, where Buteau is laid to rest. The day after the funeral, a young boy makes a shocking discovery. A bomb has been planted on the route taken by the procession, posing a grave threat to the Hells Angels riders. Police surmise that the bomb has been placed and disguised under cover of darkness on the night before the funeral, in what appears to be a targeted attempt on the lives of the bikers. In the world of criminal biker gangs, not even a funeral is sacred. However, the seemingly heaviest blow against the Hells Angels, the murder of the leader, does not lead to the hoped-for effect. In 1984, the Hells Angels go on the rampage again. Car bombs, drive-by shootings, and suddenly untraceable outlaw members. With calculated precision, the Hells Angels deliver devastating blows to the Outlaws, causing them to retreat from Montreal in defeat. The Outlaws are forced to regroup in Ontario, where they can maintain their stronghold, but the Hells Angels have demonstrated their overwhelming power and dominance in the region. Despite the efforts of law enforcement, the Hells Angels continue to operate with impunity, and their influence remains a significant force in the Canadian underworld. The First Canadian Biker War has come to a close, but it has only served to solidify the Hells Angels' reputation as one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the country.
After that grim chapter of the most violent biker war, we plunge into the most deadly biker massacre ever. Picture a scene of unprecedented violence, a moment that forever stains biker history.
Ontario, Canada, is a place known for its peaceful tranquility, where neighbors wave hello and families gather at local events. But beneath the surface of this idyllic community, a dark chapter in Canadian criminal history unfolds, one that sends shockwaves through the nation. In April 2006, a massacre takes place that exposes a world of violence, betrayal, and shattered loyalties. It is a day that will forever etch the name Wayne Kellisstein into the annals of infamy. As the leader of a renegade faction within the Bandidos, Kellisstein is no stranger to danger. In fact, he relishes in it and escalates things to a new level that leaves the entire nation bewildered and aghast. With his tough nature and his reckless disregard for the law, Kellisstein becomes a legend in the world of outlaw bikers, feared by his enemies and revered by his brethren. Born in 1949, not much is known about the upbringing of Wayne, leaving the world curious about the path that leads him to a life of crime. By the tender age of 18, he has already become a seasoned criminal, delving into burglaries, drug dealing, and even whispers of murder. Without any gang protection to shield him from the dangers of the Canadian underworld, Wayne is a vulnerable figure. In July 1977, the Outlaws Motorcycle Club expands into Canada, absorbing the Satan's Choice chapter in London, Ontario. Kellisstein seeks membership, but is denied as he is seen as a heat score, a guy who continuously draws attention from the police. In 1982, he then is allowed to establish a puppet club of the Outlaws and names it the Holocaust Motorcycle Club, which didn't sit well with many other outlaw members and therefore is later renamed to the Annihilators Motorcycle Club in 1988. The sick name he chooses for his club already indicates what kind of twisted mind this guy has. However, Wayne's success is marred by his unpredictable temper, which frequently poses obstacles in his path. His fiery nature eventually leads to an incident in June 1991 when an outlaw member accuses Wayne of shooting him. The charges are eventually dropped when the accuser chooses not to testify, but the incident places Wayne under the watchful gaze of the police, who now regard him as a person of interest. A year later, in 1992, a moment of reckoning arrives for Wayne. As part of a police crackdown codenamed Project Bandido targeting both the Annihilators and the Outlaws, Kellisstein is arrested at his farm. He is found drunk and high in his living room, surrounded by guns, cocaine, cash, and Nazi memorabilia. Little does Wayne know that his story is far from over. The farm may have been seized and his freedom stripped away, but the indomitable spirit within him refuses to be extinguished. As Wayne emerges from his prison cell, he finds himself thrust back into a world that has dramatically changed during his incarceration. The Hells Angels, the Outlaw's most formidable adversaries, have risen in power, igniting a fierce war for dominance within the criminal underworld. Determined to reclaim his former position, Wayne wastes no time in resuming his role as a biker boss. However, the Outlaws, tired of Wayne's explosive temper and unpredictable nature, make a fateful decision to ban him and his club. Stripped of his once loyal comrades, Wayne finds himself grappling with a loss of power and influence. In search of a new alliance, he turns to the Outlaws MC, where he forms a partnership with Giovanni Massadir, who swiftly becomes Wayne's protege and trusted right-hand man. While the Hells Angels attempt to recruit Wayne, he defiantly rejects their offer. Enraged by his rejection, the Hells Angels seek revenge and orchestrate a drive-by shooting targeting Wayne. Though he miraculously survives the attack, his troubles continue to mount. The Hells Angels gain the upper hand in the ongoing war, attracting numerous clubs to their side and solidifying their grip on power. Realizing that he stands little chance against the rising tide of the Hells Angels, Wayne makes a calculated decision to seek a powerful ally. He joins forces with the formidable Bandidos, the second most influential biker club in the world, aiming to shift the balance of power once more. However, his ambitions are thwarted when he is arrested in 2000 for illegal possession of firearms, sparking an intense police investigation. The authorities, not only investigating Wayne but also targeting him, uncover a cache of over 40 weapons in his possession. Although he is initially placed in custody, Wayne manages to secure release on bail after 2 years of legal battles. When he re-enters the world outside prison walls in 2002, he is met with a disheartening realization. His former protege, Giovanni Massadia, has ascended to the presidency of the Bandidos during Wayne's absence. Fueled by wounded pride and an unwillingness to accept his former protege's newfound authority, Wayne engages in a heated argument with Giovanni. However, the club rallies behind Giovanni, solidifying their support and accepting him as their rightful leader, further marginalizing Wayne in the process. The walls of loyalty that once surrounded him now stand as a barrier between Wayne and his desired position of power. Giovanni leads the Bandidos with a quiet yet firm hand, driven by a personal code that forbids any involvement in the sale of methamphetamine due to his strong moral compass. However, his principled stance attracts its fair share of enemies. The American Bandidos presidents, in particular, disagree with his leadership style, citing the lack of profitability as their main concern. Faced with this opposition, the Bandidos decide to sever ties with Giovanni, stripping him and his crew of their Bandido affiliation. In response, Giovanni renames his club the No Surrender Crew, a defiant declaration of their independence. Despite the name change, tensions remain high as many members of the No Surrender Crew continue to proudly display their Bandido patches. This flagrant disregard for the wishes of the American Bandidos further exacerbates the situation. Determined to resolve the issue, the American Bandidos arrange a meeting at the border between Canada and the United States, inviting Wayne Kellisstein and Michael Santam, two influential figures, to represent their interests. The meeting is presided over by Peter Mongo Price, the most powerful man in the Bandidos. Price takes the opportunity to express the problem at hand. emphasizing that the continued display of Bandido patches by the No Surrender crew is not only disrespectful, but also a clear violation of club rules. However, he reassures Wayne and Michael that a violent confrontation is not the desired outcome. All he requests is that the No Surrender crew cease wearing the patches. In return, Price promises to appoint Wayne as the National Bandidos president, acknowledging his leadership qualities. Despite Price's intentions for a peaceful resolution, Wayne and Michael have a different plan in mind from the outset. Fueled by their desire for vengeance, they aim to eliminate Giovanni and his crew entirely. Wayne is armed to the teeth, and Michael has a loyal group of men ready to wage war against the No Surrender crew. To devise a strategic plan, Santam and his men convene at Kellisstein's farm, where they intend to eliminate their adversaries in one fell swoop. In a cunning move, Wayne invites Giovanni Masidi and his crew to his farm under the pretense of addressing the discrepancies between the two groups. Oblivious to the impending danger, Giovanni agrees to the meeting, unknowingly stepping into a carefully laid trap. Time is of the essence, as the fateful encounter looms closer. Sensing the impending danger, Wayne swiftly sends his wife and daughter abroad, ensuring their safety while withholding the true reason behind their sudden departure. The No Surrender crew arrives at Wayne Kellisstein's farm, the clock ticking past 10:30 in the evening. Their numbers total 8 men: Giovanni Massadir, Jamie Flans, George Kriarakis, Luis Raposo, George Chasson, Paul Sinapoli, Frank Salemo, and Michael Trotter. Little do they know the treacherous fate that awaits them within those darkened grounds. As the crew steps onto the farm, a palpable tension hangs in the air, casting an eerie shadow over the scene. It is Luis Raposo who first senses that something is terribly amiss. His instincts ring alarm bells, and his gaze falls upon Michael Santam, gripping a menacing firearm. Swiftly realizing the danger, Raposo springs into action, unleashing a hail of bullets towards Santam. His shots find their mark, but to his dismay, Santam remains unscathed, shielded by a bulletproof vest. Recovering swiftly, Santam retaliates, his lethal gunfire finding Raposo, claiming his life in the chaotic crossfire. The sudden eruption of violence on the farm plunges the scene into chaos. Sensing a slim chance of escape, Sinapoli and Kriarakis seize the moment to make a desperate break for freedom. However, their fleeting hopes are dashed as Wayne Kellisstein intercepts their path, halting their flight. With Kellisstein and Santam's crew now in control, the remaining members of the No Surrender crew find themselves held captive, their fate uncertain. Caught in the turmoil of the moment, Kellisstein and Santam grapple with their own conflicted thoughts, uncertain of the immediate future. Seeking solace in alcohol, Kellisstein drowns his troubles with each passing sip, even permitting one of the victims to make a call to his girlfriend. As time drags on, Wayne Kellisstein makes a devastating decision, a choice that will seal the fate of the No Surrender crew. Determined to carry out his grim mission, he resolves to eliminate each member one by one, ensuring the completion of his sinister plan. Driven by his propensity for violence and alcohol, he takes out one after the other. With each life extinguished, Kellisstein's resolve grows colder, until he reaches the last of the No Surrender crew. However, his intoxicated state renders him unable to pull the trigger himself, thus delegating the task to his own loyal henchmen. Having accomplished his dark intentions, Kellisstein devises a scheme to shift the blame onto the Hells Angels. He orders his crew to transport the lifeless bodies of the No Surrender crew into Hells Angels territory, intending to pass off the act as the handiwork of their rival gang. Yet, fate intervenes, and their plans are derailed when their vehicles run out of fuel just as they approach the territorial boundaries. Forced to abandon their cars, they seek refuge on a nearby farm, where they set the vehicles ablaze in a desperate bid to erase any incriminating evidence. Realizing the gravity of their predicament, Kellisstein hastily makes calls to 2 trusted confidants, seeking their aid in obliterating any lingering traces of their macabre undertaking. However, unbeknownst to them, the vigilant eyes of law enforcement have already begun to scrutinize the case, launching a thorough investigation into the events that unfolded on that ill-fated night. The proximity of the burnt car to Kellisstein's farm raises immediate suspicion, casting a damning light on Wayne Kellisstein's involvement in the heinous crime. Law enforcement wastes no time, launching a meticulous forensic investigation on the premises. Their search yields damning evidence as the investigators discover victims' keys concealed within Kellisstein's fireplace, a chilling testament to his connection to the murders. In a stroke of fortune for the investigators, they also stumble upon a partially burnt business card belonging to none other than Jamie Flans, further linking the suspects to the crime. The determined efforts of the police do not end there, as they meticulously scour the farm for any additional clues. Their exhaustive search yields results as they unearth the murder weapons, solidifying the case against Kellisstein and his co-defendants. Following their apprehension, the suspects faced a trial that commenced on the 9th of January 2007. The jury, after careful deliberation, returned a verdict of guilty on all charges for Wayne Kellisstein and his co-defendant. While Wayne Kellisstein remains alive to this day, his fate is sealed within the confines of prison, where he will spend the remainder of his days paying for the crimes he orchestrated. The chilling events surrounding the No Surrender crew and their encounter with Kellisstein's merciless plan serve as a haunting reminder of the depths of human depravity and the unwavering pursuit of justice by those who stand against it.
Taking a somber turn, we explore the aftermath of the most deadly biker massacre ever and the complex dynamics of the bloody battle for Britain. Picture a landscape scarred by conflict, a battleground where the struggle for supremacy reaches a new intensity. Imagine a time when motorcycles ruled the roads and biker culture was at its peak. It's the late 1960s, and a storm is brewing in the heart of Great Britain. The Hells Angels, the infamous motorcycle gang that has taken the United States by storm, has set their sights on new horizons. Their arrival in a country with no significant biker scene sent shockwaves through the nation. Proudly donning their iconic leather cuts, emblazoned with the skull and wings, they left an indelible mark on the British landscape. But little did they know they weren't the only ones seeking a slice of the British motorcycle pie. Another motorcycle gang is present in Britain, the Outlaws. The exact timing of their arrival on the island remains unclear to this day. Some sources claim they are already there before the Hells Angels, while others assert that the Outlaws established their roots in Britain only in the late 1980s. The relationship between the Hells Angels and the Outlaws is a blend of collaboration, rivalry, and conflicts. The conflicts between the two clubs do not originate directly from issues between them. The Hells Angels initially become embroiled in a feud with a club named the Outcasts, which has connections to the Outlaws. Tensions between the Hells Angels and the Outcasts begin in 1997, when the Outcasts plan to ally with another club called the Lost Tribe MC to form a powerful biker group. However, things take an unexpected turn when the Lost Tribe MC decides to join the Hells Angels instead. In November of the same year, 2 Outcasts members are stopped by the police. They are en route to confront Hells Angels members and are armed. A direct collision could be prevented here by the intervention of the officers. The confrontation continues in January 1998 at a legendary rocker reunion concert held in a large hall. Among the 1,700 attendees are members of the Outcasts. On that day, the Hells Angels appear ready to attack. In a tragic incident, 2 Outcasts members are assaulted and succumb to their injuries. This event reignites hostilities between the two clubs, triggering a spiral of further confrontations. The feud between the Hells Angels and the Outcasts evolves into a fierce conflict, marked by recurring clashes. Some sources claim that the Outlaws also become involved in the conflict following the events of 1998, further intensifying tensions between the clubs. The activities and presence of the Hells Angels and the Outlaws in Britain are closely monitored by law enforcement authorities to counter criminal activities and ensure public safety. Laws and measures are implemented to address the crimes committed by biker groups while the battle for dominance on British streets continues. But the watchful eye of the government cannot control all bikers at all times. It is a sunny day in August when the Bulldog Bash, an annual biker gathering, is in full swing. Initiated by the Hells Angels, the event has grown from modest beginnings to become one of the largest biker gatherings in Europe. Year after year, the event expands, and in 2007, for example, a total of 50,000 people flocked to the Bulldog Bash. Just so you can imagine how big of a thing that is. However, the event's venue, the Shakespeare County Raceway in Warwickshire, is not without tension as it purportedly lies in Outlaws territory. In 2001, an incident occurs that remains unresolved to this day, causing unease. A Hells Angel is preparing to leave the Bulldog Bash when a black car suddenly appears next to him. Without warning, shots are fired at the biker from the car. Luckily, the biker is only hit in the foot. He survives the attack, but the perpetrators remain unknown. The incident goes unresolved as nobody is willing to cooperate with the police.
This is a typical behavior of biker club members. It is important for them to keep the police and authorities out of their affairs. Those who do not comply will, if they are lucky, only be excluded.
In the following years, from 2001 to 2007, the conflict between the Hells Angels and the Outlaws appears to calm on the surface. However, what transpires behind the scenes remains concealed and will likely remain a secret forever. Towards the end of 2006, though, the Outlaws devise a plan. According to police information, the president of the Warwickshire chapter of the Outlaws is planning an attack. Their target is a Hells Angels biker, and once again, the Bulldog Bash seems to present the perfect opportunity for the attack. The president of the Outlaws even sets up a small shooting range on his property to practice aiming. In total, 7 outlaw bikers are involved in this incident set to take place at the Bulldog Bash 2007. Surveillance cameras capture footage of the Outlaws members scouting the area outside the Bulldog Bash. August 12th arrives, and Jerry Tobin, a Hells Angels biker, is captured on a surveillance camera refueling around 2 p.m. He is accompanied by 2 other Hells Angels bikers. Shortly after the recording, the 3 bikers take to the highway. At the same time, the Outlaws are traveling in a Rover on the highway, searching for a full patched Hells Angels member. When they spot the 3 men, they decide to carry out their plan. Jerry is hit, and his Harley Davidson is riddled with bullets. Jerry later succumbs to his injuries. From the point of view of the outcasts, the attack was a success. But when police found the burnout Rover linked to the shooting, Sean Crichton was arrested shortly afterwards. He'd used his own vehicle to carry out the execution. While Crichton pleaded guilty, the 6 other men denied any involvement. If it wasn't for Malcolm Bull, who broke the bikers' code of silence by speaking to the police, it's possible that only Crichton, Garside, Turner, and Bull himself would have been sentenced to life in prison. In the end, all 7 were handed life sentences, with minimum time spent behind bars ranging from 25 to 30 years. But one of those convicted has been sentenced to a full life term. Malcolm Bull isn't just at risk from the Hells Angels, but from his former fellow outlaws by breaking a strict code of silence that is at the very heart of one-percenter biker culture. The Outlaws' motto is "God forgives, outlaws don't," and it's unlikely Malcolm Bull will be allowed to forget that anytime soon. Stepping away from Britain's historic streets, we plunge into the dynamic fray of the most deadly biker battle in New York. The saga continues, unfolding a gripping tale of conflict, resilience, and power dynamics as the Hells Angels navigate the urban landscape with relentless determination. In the concrete jungle of New York City, a clash of titans unfolds. 2 legendary motorcycle clubs, the Hells Angels and the Pagans, find themselves locked in a battle for dominance, their paths destined to collide with devastating consequences. This battle shakes the community in New York City to the core. Assassinations happen in broad daylight, and drive-by shootings occur. If you're a part of a one-percenter club, there is no time off, and the enemy could be lurking around every corner. But who will emerge victorious in this unforgiving showdown? The deadly rise of the Pagans MC. In the gritty world of American bikers, the Pagans MC holds its own, rubbing shoulders with the infamous Hells Angels and Bandidos. True to their name, these guys are up to no good. And you better believe the Hells Angels know exactly who they're messing with. But how the hell did these outlaws carve their path to biker royalty in the first place? The history of motorcycle clubs can be traced back to World War II. It was during this time that many powerful biker clubs emerged as a form of recreation. Little did the founders realize the impact these clubs would have on the present-day scene. Among them, the Hells Angels stand out as arguably the most influential biker club. They too were established in the aftermath of World War II. These clubs are referred to as outlaws, indicating their penchant for occasionally engaging in criminal activities, and their disregard for the rules set by the American Motorcycling Association. Unlike other motorcycle clubs, they operate on their own terms. But today, not only the American Motorcycling Association is skeptical of their intentions. The U.S. Department of Justice defines outlaw motorcycle clubs as organizations whose members utilize their clubs as conduits for criminal activities.
Here I must add that this characterization developed some time after the original creation of the motorcycle clubs. The initial idea was much more free and peaceful, but it seems that somehow a few of these clubs are just looking for the dangerous life.
For veterans, reintegrating into society after the war was not always easy. Motorcycles provided a sense of personal freedom and became a source of camaraderie and excitement. Initially, these clubs were formed for fun, support, and a sense of thrill. The Second World War had a significant impact on the motorcycle industry, prompting the U.S. military to request Harley-Davidson to produce over 100,000 motorcycles. Technological advancements rapidly increased as motorcycles were designed for military use. Thus, the origins of motorcycle clubs may have been humble. Their legacy and influence are still felt today. In the post-World War II era, as the nation heals its wounds, restless souls seek solace and freedom on the open road. Lou Dobkin founds the Pagans Motorcycle Club in Prince George's, Maryland. Little does anyone know that this humble beginning ignites a firestorm of chaos and criminality. The Pagans are a tight-knit group of 13 members, donning denim jackets and roaring down the highways on Triumph motorcycles. United by love for the wind and the thrill, their brotherhood is unbreakable. Symbols of fear adorn the Pagans. Their denim vests bear Surt, the Norse fire giant, symbolizing fiery wrath. The Pagans' unmistakable insignia warns those who dare challenge them. With growing numbers, the hunger for power surges within the Pagans. President John Satan Maron leads them down a dark path, striking deals with La Cosa Nostra. Violence becomes their currency, spreading terror. Despite criminal activities, the Pagans operate with military-like precision. Shrouded in secrecy, they rival the notorious Hells Angels. Law enforcement struggles to infiltrate their ranks, outmaneuvered by a club with its own rules. But anyone crossing the Angels must prepare to enter hell itself. Clash of Titans, Hells Angels versus Pagans, MC. Amidst the escalating feud between the Pagans, MC, and the Hells Angels. MC, the streets of New Jersey and Pennsylvania bristle with tension and the faint scent of impending danger. Authorities suspect both clubs' involvement in the drug trade, their hands potentially stained with illicit dealings. The battleground shifts to the bustling boroughs of New York City, where territorial disputes bring the Pagans and the Hells Angels face to face. It is the year 2018, April 28th, when several members of the Pagans MC cross paths with Shank, a Hells Angels biker, at a gas station near his club's stronghold. Oblivious to the lurking danger, Shank stops to refuel his motorcycle. A group of Pagans descends upon Shank, their aggression palpable. With swift brutality, they launch a surprise attack, unleashing a torrent of blows that leave Shank battered and broken. A blatant action of the Pagans. With several men, they grabbed Shank, who was driving alone, an action that the Hells Angels remembered and considered very carefully how they deal with it. But for the Angels, there is no retreat, only the fittest wins. With tensions reaching a boiling point, the Hells Angels made a bold decision, a symbolic act of defiance. After nearly half a century rooted in their Manhattan East Village clubhouse, they relinquished their stronghold, severing their connection to a legacy steeped in history. Instead, they set their sights on the heart of Pagans' territory, the Bronx. There, on Longstreet Avenue, they acquired a new two-story fortress, marking their unwavering presence amidst their enemies. But as it had to happen, This move was not without consequences. The Pagans certainly don't just let another biker club move peacefully into the neighborhood. A welcome gift should follow soon. The clock strikes January 2nd, 2020, a date destined to be marred by violence. Under the cover of darkness, a hailstorm of bullets rains upon the Hells Angels Bronx sanctuary. Miraculously, no lives are claimed, but the clubhouse bears the scars of this brazen attack. Surveillance footage unveils a chilling sight, a roaring procession of motorcycles, their riders masked, firing indiscriminately at the clubhouse, leaving destruction in their wake. The Pagans draw first blood, but the Hells Angels will not remain idle for long. 5 months later, the Bronx streets bear witness to a meticulously planned act of retribution. The president of the Pagans Bronx chapter, Francisco Rosado, becomes their target. In a calculated ambush caught on surveillance cameras, Hells Angels members emerge from the shadows, masked and armed to the teeth. Their intentions are clear: to eliminate their foe. The lethal dance unfolds with precision, and Francisco Rosado, a man once feared by his enemies, now falls victim to their wrath. His lifeblood stains the pavement as the three assailants flee into the shadows. But fate will not be kind to them for long. Authorities, fueled by the urgency to quell the raging storm, leave no stone unturned in their pursuit of justice. Their efforts bear fruit as they swiftly apprehend the three individuals responsible for Francisco Rosado's demise. The wheels of justice set in motion, promising to exact retribution upon those who seek to paint the streets red. But the War of the Hell Angels and the Pagans does not only take place in New York. In Massachusetts, too, the two clubs shy away from nothing. Massachusetts Mayhem, the bloody rivalry unveiled. As spring unfolds in April 2022, the Pagans make a bold move, establishing a new chapter dangerously close to the Hells Angels territory in Fall River, Massachusetts. It is a direct challenge, a provocation that will not go unanswered. The Hells Angels, known for their ruthlessness, are not about to let the encroachment go unnoticed. The Hells Angels respond with a vengeance. They reestablish their presence in Cape Cod and issue a chilling mandate, a green light policy. It is a declaration of war, allowing the Hells Angels members to attack any pagan they encounter on sight. The tension in the air is palpable, and the streets crackle with an impending storm. On May 14th, the thunderous rumble of motorcycle engines reverberates through the night. Over 100 Hells Angels members descend upon a chosen battleground. A smaller group of 25 breaks away, ready to face the Pagans head-on at their clubhouse. Under the cloak of darkness, chaos erupts. Women are hastily ushered inside as 7 Hells Angels members emerge from the shadows, their weapons gleaming ominously. Knives, hammers, and clubs are brandished with lethal intent, unleashing a storm of violence upon the unsuspecting Pagans. Supporting the Hells Angels from the shadows, additional members and their associates cunningly block traffic, acting as lookouts to ensure their rivals have no escape. The streets transform into a battleground. The brawl erupts with a fury as bodies collide, screams pierce the night, and the acrid scent of fear hangs heavy in the air. As chaos consumes the streets, the wails of sirens cut through the night. The police descend upon the scene, their authority pitted against the ferocity of the warring clubs. Their intervention aims to break up the fight and usher the wounded to safety, but it is a daunting task in the face of such unrestrained violence. The Hells Angels, bloodied but unbowed, retreat to their Cape Cod stronghold. It is a temporary respite as the war between the two gangs rages on. In the aftermath of the violent street brawl, whispers of retribution and revenge echo through the shadows. The Hells Angels seethe with anger, their thirst for dominance unquenched. The Pagans, battered and bruised, lick their wounds and prepare for the next battle.
Hells Angels live dangerously, and the worst enemies lurk within their own ranks.
We simply try to suppress the situation in order to go through a normal daily routine.
For years, a generational, cultural, and violent battle has raged among the Angels.
How do you want to die?
I hope I don't die at all, as long as no one shoots at me.
A month later, this rocker will be dead. The bosses also fear for their power.
Did you order a hit?
Certainly not. That's a made-up story.
Hanover has long been the secret capital of the Hells Angels in Germany. Frank Hanebuth dominates the local nightlife district and reaches far into the middle of upper-class society. When the best-known Hell's Angel gets married outside Hanover in the summer of 2017, the whole event takes on the character of a folk festival. The former professional boxer Frank Hanebuth is the most iconic figure of the Hell's Angels. With his gang behind him, he has built up an empire of pubs, brothels, and sports studios. At the same time, he has the best contacts in civil society. Hanebuth can be a gangster and a gourmet. Very few people in this business can do that. But the rocker scene has changed radically in recent years, and Frank Hanebuth has not endured this development unharmed.
Frank Hanebuth is definitely a figurehead of the club. He is without a doubt the best-known member in Germany.
Hanebuth is the interface between underground and bourgeoisie. When it comes to birthdays, his lawyer Gotz von Fromberg joins in the celebrations. He was also best man to Gerhard Schroeder, the former Chancellor of Germany. Hanebuth creates a Hell's Angels world of experience with his own beer, cigarettes, and Harley sound. He becomes the mayor of nightlife. Tens of thousands of people flock to the parties in the red light district, sponsored by Beck's and the Bild newspaper, and approved by the city. The police can only look on powerlessly.
A certain role was certainly played by the fact that we were not able to prove any specific crimes of a particular kind. He has also established himself here economically quite strongly. Thus, it was difficult to push him back.
Will Frank Hanebuth be able to continue to stroll through Germany so freely in the future? And how does he deal with the internal tension in his gang? Will he be willing to compromise? Or will he defend his position as the most powerful Hell's Angel in Europe without mercy? The conflict between Bandidos and Hell's Angels is a battle of brotherhoods and brutal violence. These two outlaw motorcycle clubs are locked in a deadly struggle for dominance and territory, with each side willing to do whatever it takes to come out on top. It's a clash of titans that has left a trail of bloodshed and destruction in its wake, and shows no signs of cooling down anytime soon. When the war between the Hell's Angels and the Bandidos began in 2007, Hanebuth was also targeted by investigators. At that time, the Hell's Angels recruited many young men in order to quickly increase their own strength. This was about to backfire on Hanebuth. One of these so-called supporters, the killer Stefan R., testified as a key witness in order to reduce his own sentence for human trafficking. Allegedly, the missing Turkish Tekken B had been tortured and finally brutally executed by the Hell's Angels in a car repair shop.
Did you order a hit?
Certainly not. That's a made-up story.
The key witness gets a reduced sentence, although the police find no evidence to support his statements. It later turns out the man was unreliable. Other police authorities had warned of this in advance. During a raid on Hanebuth's estate, the GSG-9 shoots his dog.
They didn't have to come there with the GSG-9. The detectives from Hanover also know that I will face any responsibility if there is a problem, if there is something. It's enough to ring the bell. I come out and face my responsibility.
Behind the tough facade of the rocker boss, he's probably not only worried about the death of his dog. With power struggles within his gang, the law breathing down his neck, and betrayal within his own ranks, the leader's life is at stake. With his life on the line, how far will the leader go to protect his interest in money, power, and status? What risks is he willing to take in order to ensure his survival? In 2013, Hanebuth moves from Hanover to Mallorca, a Mediterranean island of Spain. Rumor has it that the leader of the Hell's Angels was tired of the cold and gray streets of Hanover and wanted to start fresh with a new professional foothold. But was the beautiful weather, palm trees, and sand beaches really the only reason for Hanebuth's move? Or is this just yet another move to gain more money, power, and glory? Will his arrival on the Spanish island lead to international conflict and bloodshed in Europe's biggest party city? The sunny beaches of Mallorca seemed like the perfect place to establish his reign of terror even further, far away from the watchful eyes of law enforcement. But Hanebuth's plans don't go exactly as planned. Shortly after he arrives, he is arrested by the Spanish police at a friend's finca. The charges range from drug trafficking and money laundering to prostitution. Hanebuth goes into custody. He leaves behind a power vacuum among the Angels in Germany. Spanish authorities investigate for 3 years, but the results are not enough to charge Hanebuth. In September 2016, he is allowed to travel to Hanover for a week, as his 52nd birthday is coming up. On his 50th, he was still in a Spanish high-security prison.
It's nice to be back home. We'll be fine. Today we're going full throttle. Today is birthday. Full throttle, extraordinary, everything that goes. And then we'll go in.
In the district, Frank Hanebuth is welcomed by hundreds of Hell's Angels, friends, and business partners. It is also a return to his roots. This is where the teacher's son started as a pub landlord more than 30 years ago and boxed his way to the top of the European Hell's Angels. The power struggle in the biker scene goes into the next round. Will the boss be able to stand his ground after his time away? Will Hanebuth's return to Hanover lead to a new era of Hell's Angels dominance? Or will his enemies finally take him down for good? As a group that prizes loyalty and brotherhood above all else, the Hell's Angels have a long history of punishing those who betray their trust or step out of line in any way. But how far does this brotherhood really go? What happens when wealth and power are more important than honor and code? Maybe even more important than the life of another Hell's Angel. Andre Sommer, a former hooligan from East Berlin, experiences firsthand that things are often not very brotherly in rocker brotherhoods.
A Hell's Angels means to me, let's say, a free-spirited rebel. But of course you provoke and shock in a well-mannered society with such behavior.
At the time, his president is one of the most powerful Hell Angels ever. Holger Bossen, nicknamed Hawko. In 2008, he was expelled from the club for allegedly embezzling money. Bossen wanted to return to the club, and Andre Sommer wanted to prevent that.
Hawko is said to have stolen from the club. Is that why he was kicked out?
No comment.
On June 10, 2012, a killer armed with a Sig Sauer caliber 9mm is on his way to Zingsterstrasse in the East Berlin district of Hohenschönhausen. This is where the rocker president always parked his motorcycle. Out of the bushes steps Oleg Cherkasov, a 36-year-old Ukrainian, shoots. The first shot misses the heart by only half an inch and injures the pericardium. Further shots to the chest pierce the 400-pound man. The physical shock reaction fails to appear. Sommer is still conscious and lucky again. The numerous large blood vessels are unharmed. The next life-threatening shot hits him in the abdomen and liver. The projectile misses the abdominal aorta by only 2 centimeters. Probably the last shot hits the severely injured man in the 12th thoracic vertebra. 1 centimeter further and the spinal cord would have been severed. The result would be paralysis. Holger Bossen and Michael W., nicknamed Russian Michael, were behind the murder. Bossen admitted the accusation to investigators. Allegedly, Sommer only should be taught a lesson. Holger Bossen is sentenced to 7.5 years in prison for attempted incitement to murder. Andre Sommer recovered surprisingly well from the brutal attack and enjoys an even higher reputation than before. But what happens when the disputes of individual Hell's Angels become whole troop movements within the club? How far will veteran members go to defend their power against newcomers? And how many bloodthirsty rockers do you need for a coup? For about 10 years, many men with a migration background have flocked to the Hell's Angels. In the Frankfurt chapter of the Hell Angels, Aygun Muchuk, a Turk, is one of the first members with foreign roots. The leader of the Frankfurt Angels is a man who is said to have made it as a millionaire in the underground, through a mixture of street smart and ruthlessness. His name is Walter Burkhardt. Because of his past as a butcher, he is known only as Schnitzel Walter. 2014. Aygun Muchuk has gathered dissatisfied rockers around him. He wants to open his own Angels branch. Schnitzel Walter initially has nothing against Muchuk's expansion, but then he changes his mind and deprives Muchuk of lucrative bouncer jobs for brothels and trendy clubs. It comes to a showdown at Frankfurt's Katana Club. 40 men, led by Muchuk, storm the place. Police investigation reveals one of Schnitzel's men shoots at Muchuk, who survives only by luck. Angels shoot at angels. An unprecedented event, but supposedly all quite harmless.
In every big family there are quarrels. And then at the door also quarrel happens. Muchuk's power is based primarily in the immigrant milieu.
He has rallied around him new gangs like the Ottomans or the Guerrilla Nation. At a boxing event in Offenbach, he publicly presents his allies.
Good people are always good friends, right? We know them. We know everybody right now.
These men are his life insurance policy with the Angels. Police call these troops rocker-like groups.
You can strengthen your own troops numerically, and also in terms of presence on the street, without having to treat them as members in the strictest sense. With all the associated regulations, namely support in case of dispute, injury, detention, etc.
Muchuk is also the talk at the so-called World Run of the Hells Angels. In 2016, Hells Angels from all over the world will meet in Warsaw. The rockers want to discuss how to continue in the club. Specifically, they will also discuss Agun Muchuk, who is said to have broken the rules once again. But Muchuk is pardoned, once again. After his pardon, he greets police officers who know the scene, although this is forbidden according to the rules of the rockers.
There is actually a rule. No communication with the police.
Any problems?
Jakieś problemy z policją do tej pory?
No.
Żadnych problemów.
No problems.
The rule is very different. You have to read those better.
It's scenes like this that make the old men in the Hells Angels clubs boil. Muchuk simply won't be disciplined. He ignores the Hells Angels rules that have been in place for decades. In Berlin, Muchuk attends a funeral of the new gang Guerrilla Nation. The fact that it competes directly with the Berlin Hells Angels, that it has even come to clashes, bothers Muchuk little. As a Hells Angel from the Frankfurt region, Muchuk is not allowed to look for supporters in Berlin. That disturbs the interests of the Berlin Angels. Nevertheless, Muchuk even leads the funeral march in Berlin. The rocker boss spends 20 minutes at the cemetery, time enough to think about death himself.
How do you want to die?
I hope I don't die at all, as long as no one shoots at me.
Und den türkisch geprägten Hells Angels aus Gießen fand heute Morgen vorerst einen traurigen Höhepunkt. Aygün Muchuk, der Anführer der Hells Angels in Gießen, wurde tot im Clubheim.
His killers ambushed Muchuk in front of the rocker clubhouse. The 45-year-old was shot 17 times at close range. To this day, the murder remains unsolved.
In the gritty underworld of Perth, Australia, one name stands out among the rest. Dane Brachovich. Standing 6'2" and weighing 220 pounds, this former Hells Angels Sergeant-at-Arms commands attention with 80% of his body covered in tattoos. By age 26, he had climbed to a position of power in one of the world's most notorious motorcycle clubs, boasting over 6,000 members across 59 countries. But Brachovich's story takes a dramatic turn in January 2022 when a seemingly innocuous argument and a series of escalating conflicts within the club leads to his expulsion from the Hells Angels.
The story's in Tuesday's West. The rumour is the gang expelled Dane because he didn't want them associating with other clubs. Word is Dane got the shits with Hells Angels members hanging out with other clubs at parties and whatnot. There was a poolside gathering with rebels at Scarborough. The cops broke that one up, didn't like cats being on show. Being a teetotaler, maybe Dane was pissed he wasn't invited.
11 months later, at a concert with 10,000 attendees, Brachovich narrowly escapes death as an assailant's blade misses his jugular by mere millimeters.
With $319,000 worth of gold adorning his body and a history of violence, including a bar brawl that preceded a rival's assassination, Brachovich walks a dangerous line between his past and an uncertain future. And as police conduct raids and make arrests, one question remains clear. Can a man that has tattooed Hells Angels on his forehead ever truly leave this outlaw life behind? Dane Brachovich, a name that echoes through the streets of Perth, striking fear into the hearts of many. Born in 1979, Dane grew up in the rough suburbs of Western Australia's capital. From an early age, he was exposed to the allure of the BIKER lifestyle, a world that promised brotherhood, power, and respect.
A lot of that life is straight out of the bikie playbook. Grows up in a tough area, which Belmont certainly was back in the 80s when Dane was a kid. Problematic relationship with his father, he hates him. Gets kicked out of school, that was Ursula Frayne Catholic College in East Vic Park. Falls in with the wrong crowd. In Dane's case, that was a bloke called Tristan Albury, one of Australia's great psychopaths.
As a teenager, Dane found himself drawn to motorcycles. The roar of engines, the rush of wind, the promise of freedom on two wheels. It all called to him like a siren song. But for a young man with ambition burning in his veins, the thrill of riding wasn't enough. Dane craved more. He wanted to belong to something bigger, something feared and respected. Enter the Hells Angels. With over 6,000 members across 59 countries, the Hells Angels weren't just any motorcycle club. They were legends, outlaws, a brotherhood forged in chrome and leather. For Dane, it was everything he'd ever wanted. But joining the infamous club wasn't a walk in the park. The Hells Angels don't just let anyone in. You have to prove yourself, show your worth, demonstrate your loyalty, and prove himself. Dane did.
Standing at an imposing 6'2" and weighing in at a solid 220 lbs, Dane had the physical presence to back up his ambitions. But it wasn't just his size that caught the eye of the Hells Angels' leadership.
It was his unwavering loyalty, his ruthless reputation, and his willingness to do whatever it took to protect the club's interests. Dane climbed the ranks faster than anyone could have predicted. By 2005, at the young age of 26, he had achieved what many spend a lifetime pursuing. Dane Brachovich became the Sergeant-at-Arms of the Perth chapter of the Hells Angels. It was a position of power, of respect, and of fear. As Sergeant-at-Arms, Dane was the enforcer, the muscle. He was the guy you didn't want to cross, the one who made sure everyone towed the line. He embraced the role with a fervor that both impressed and terrified those around him. He became known for his ability to instill fear in enemies, his ruthless efficiency in dealing with threats to the club. But Dane wasn't just muscle. He was smart, calculating, always thinking 3 steps ahead.
He understood the delicate balance of power in the bikie world, the importance of alliances, and the danger of betrayal.
Under his watch, the Perth chapter of the Hells Angels flourished, expanding its influence and tightening its grip on the city's underworld. As his power grew, so did Dane's reputation. He became known for his extensive tattoos, which covered 80% of his body. Each piece of ink told a story of battles fought, of loyalty sworn, of a life lived on the edge. His body became a canvas, a testament to his dedication to the Hells Angels and the outlaw lifestyle. But there was more to Dane than just ink and muscle. Behind those tattooed eyes lay a sharp mind, always calculating, always planning. What drove this man to such extremes? What secrets lay beneath that tough exterior? As Dane's star continued to rise in the Hells Angels, those questions would soon be answered in ways that no one, not even Dane himself, could have anticipated. January 2022, a date that would forever change the course of Dane Brachovich's life. At the height of his power as the Sergeant-at-Arms of the Perth chapter of the Hells Angels, Dane seemed untouchable. But in the volatile world of outlaw motorcycle gangs, even the mightiest can fall. And fall Dane did. The catalyst wasn't a single event, but a series of escalating conflicts within the club.
Dane, known for his hot temper and uncompromising nature, had been butting heads with senior members of the Hells Angels, including the club president.
The exact details of these arguments remain shrouded in the typical secrecy of BIKER gangs, but sources close to the club spoke of growing tensions and power struggles. One particular point of contention was Dane's disapproval of some Hells Angels members partying with bikies from rival gangs.
The story's in Tuesday's West. The rumour is the gang expelled Dane because he didn't want them associating with other clubs, which is weird because a year ago Dane had no problem with this happening. That's him at the funeral of Club Dero member Robert Bubba Walker. Dane paid his respects shoulder to shoulder with coffin cheaters, gypsy jokers, outlaws, nomads, and God's garbage men.
Reports suggested that some angels had attended a birthday party for a rebels bikie and were seen with members of the Gypsy Jokers at another event.
Word is Dane got the shits with Hells Angels members hanging out with other clubs at parties and whatnot. There was a poolside gathering with rebels at Scarborough. The cops broke that one up, didn't like cats being on show. being a teetotaler, maybe Dane was pissed he wasn't invited.
For Dane, this was a betrayal of club loyalty, a line that shouldn't be crossed. The situation came to a head during a heated confrontation at the clubhouse. Witnesses described a scene of chaos as Dane, his face contorted with rage, squared off against Hells Angels Perth president Nick Martin. Words were exchanged, threats made, and then violence erupted. In the melee, Dane was reportedly punched, a physical assault that marked the final straw in his relationship with the club. The fallout was swift and merciless. Dane Brachovich, once the feared enforcer of the Perth chapter, was unceremoniously expelled from the Hells Angels. Just like that, everything he had worked for, everything he had built his identity around, was stripped away.
Dane Brachovich, bikie enforcer, Muay Thai champion, basketball fan, Shields jewellery enthusiast, current affairs thought leader, and fashion tragic, has been kicked out of the Hells Angels Outlaw motorcycle gang.
But expulsion from the Hells Angels isn't just a matter of turning in your colors. It's a death sentence of sorts. Once you're out, you're a marked man. Former brothers become deadly enemies overnight. The protection and power that come with membership evaporate, leaving you exposed and vulnerable. As Dane walked out of the clubhouse for the last time, the weight of his new reality settled on his shoulders. He was no longer Dane Brachovich, Sergeant-at-Arms of the Hells Angels. He was Dane Brachovich, former Bikie, a man with a target on his back. In the dangerous world of outlaw motorcycle gangs, falling from grace isn't just embarrassing, it's potentially deadly. And Dane was about to learn just how precarious his position had become. The expulsion sent shockwaves through the bikie community. Dane had been a prominent figure, feared and respected in equal measure.
His sudden fall from grace left a power vacuum in the Firth chapter and raised questions about the future dynamics of the club. For Dane, it marked the beginning of a dangerous new chapter in his life, one where old allies had become potential threats, and the protection of the club was no longer his to claim.
Fast forward to December 2023. The setting, Perth's Kings Park and Botanical Garden, a sprawling urban oasis usually known for its tranquil beauty. But on this night, it was anything but tranquil. The Ministry of Sound classical electronic dance music concert had drawn a crowd of 10,000 revelers, the air thick with the pulse of bass and the energy of the masses. Among the sea of faces was one that stood out, Dane Brachovich.
Nearly 2 years had passed since his explosive exit from the Hells Angels, but the former Sergeant-at-Arms still cut an imposing figure.
His heavily tattooed body, a living canvas of his past life, moved through the crowd with the practiced ease of a man always aware of his surroundings. But Dane wasn't alone. Unknown to him, someone else was there, watching, waiting. In the pulsing chaos of the concert, they saw their opportunity. It was 9:50 p.m. when it happened. A flash of movement, a glint of metal in the strobing lights, and suddenly Dane's world exploded into pain and confusion. The attack was swift and brutal. The assailant, moving with deadly precision, slashed at Dane's throat. Blood sprayed, shockingly vivid against the night sky. As Dane stumbled, his hand instinctively going to his neck, he felt the warm gush of his own life force slipping through his fingers. Panic erupted through the crowd. People screamed, pushing and shoving in their desperation to get away from the scene of violence that had so suddenly erupted in their midst. In the chaos, the attacker melted away, disappearing into the night as if they had never been there at all. Dane fell to the ground, his vision blurring, the music now a distant throb beneath the ringing in his ears. This was it, he thought. This was how Dane Brachovich, former Hells Angel, would meet his end, bleeding out on the ground at a music festival. But fate, it seemed, had other plans for Dane Brachovich. In a stroke of fortune that bordered on the miraculous, a doctor happened to be in the crowd nearby. Pushing through the panicked masses, the quick-thinking medical professional reached Dane's side. With steady hands and calm expertise, the doctor managed to stem the blood flow, quite literally saving Dane's life by mere inches. As sirens wailed in the distance, signaling the approach of police and paramedics, Dane clung to consciousness. The slash had missed his jugular vein and carotid artery by the slimmest of margins. Any deeper, any more to the side, and Dane would have been beyond saving. In the aftermath, as Dane was rushed to Royal Perth Hospital for emergency surgery, questions swirled. Who was behind this brazen attack? Was it retribution from his former Hells Angels brothers? Or had Dane made new enemies in the 2 years since his expulsion?
The Dane Brachovich stabbing has commanded all the headlines in the past few days, and that's understandable. It's not every day a tattooed meat axe is brought to his knees in a pool of blood in front of concert goers at Kings Park. But that attack, which is clearly the Hells Angels exacting revenge for his constant trash-talking of the gang...
The police were quick to act. Detective Senior Sergeant Anthony Thompson addressed the media, confirming their belief that this was a targeted attack. At this stage, we believe the incident is a result of an in-house gang-related issue between the Hells Angels and a former member, he stated. In the days that followed, police conducted raids on Hells Angels properties. 5 arrests were made, with officers uncovering drugs, guns, and ammunition. But concrete proof linking the attack to specific individuals, that remained elusive. As Dane recovered in the hospital, his neck and a finger heavily bandaged, he knew one thing for certain. His world had changed irrevocably. The hunter had become the hunted, and the game had never been more dangerous. The scene outside Royal Perth Hospital was a media circus. Journalists and camera crews jostled for position, their lenses trained on the hospital entrance. They were all waiting for one man, Dane Brachovich. When he finally emerged, his neck wrapped in a large dressing, a heavily bandaged finger, a testament to his desperate attempt to defend himself. The crowd surged forward. Questions flew thick and fast. Dane, who do you think was behind the attack? Are you afraid for your life? Will you seek revenge? But Dane, true to form, remained cool as ice. His face, a canvas of intricate tattoos, betrayed no emotion as he made his way through the throng. When he did speak, his words were as cryptic as they were shocking. I asked for it, I got it, that's the game, he told reporters, his voice steady despite the ordeal he'd just been through. The statement left everyone wondering, what exactly had Dane asked for? A knife to the throat? Or was there something deeper, something we don't know about the complex world of BIKER politics and revenge? As Dane and his wife Jacinta climbed into their waiting vehicle, a police detail fell in behind them. Detective Senior Sergeant Thompson had made it clear they had ongoing concern for his safety. The message was clear. The danger was far from over. In the days that followed, speculation ran rife. The police were certain it was a gangland hit, payback for some unknown transgression.
Police believe the notorious bikie was targeted by members of his former gang, the Hells Angels.
But Dane wasn't talking, not really.
He responded to further questions with shrugs and vague statements, revealing everything and nothing at the same time.
Behind those tattooed eyes, what was Dane really thinking? What did he know that he wasn't sharing? One thing was clear. Dane's enemies were out there, waiting and watching. In his world, mistakes could be fatal, and Dane had to tread carefully, very carefully. But was he worried? He didn't seem to be. Or was it all an act, a show of bravado for the cameras and his enemies alike? Only Dane knew for sure, and he wasn't telling, at least not yet.
The attack had thrust Dane back into the spotlight, reminding everyone of his notorious past. Brought back memories of another violent incident, the bar brawl with Rebels BIKER kingpin Nick Martin in November 2020.
CCTV footage had captured that altercation, showing Dane unleashing a flurry of punches on Martin. At the time, Dane had been fined a mere $800 for the incident, pocket change for a man of his means. But the consequences reached much further than anyone could have imagined. Just 2 weeks after the bar fight, Nick Martin was dead, taken out by a sniper at the Perth Motorplex in Kwinana Beach.
Nick Martin's murder was a very public one. He was shot from long range while watching drag races with his family at the crowded Kwinana Motorplex.
While Dane was never charged in connection with Martin's death, questions lingered. Big questions, dangerous questions, questions that remained unanswered to this day. As Dane recovered from the attack, these past events cast a long shadow. The world of outlaw motorcycle gangs was closing in around him, a web of violence, revenge, and unspoken rules. Dane had survived, this time. But in a world where today's brother could be tomorrow's executioner, how long could his luck hold out? The game, as Dane had said, was still on, and it was deadlier than ever. To the outside world, Dane Brachovich is a figure of fascination and fear. His heavily tattooed body, with ink covering 80% of his skin, tells a story of a life lived on the edge. The words Hell's Angels emblazoned on his forehead and 1%er on his neck are bold declarations of his outlaw status.
Dane Brachovich back in court again with a conspicuous band-aid. Another hearing about whether he breached the insignia laws that banned bikies from displaying gang tats and colours and anything to do with bikie culture. You'd think that was an open and shut case. Before he blacked out his tattoos, Dane had the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club acronym on his face, Sergeant at Arms on his head, and 1% on his neck.
But there's more to Dane than just his notorious reputation and extensive body art. Since 2015, Dane has been married to Jacinta. She stood by him through thick and thin, a constant presence at his side during court appearances and in the aftermath of the recent attack. Their relationship offers a glimpse into a softer side of Dane, one that's rarely seen by the public. But it's not all domestic bliss and business deals. Dane's past has a way of catching up with him, casting a long shadow over his attempts at a quieter life. Take, for instance, the infamous bar fight with Nick Martin in November 2020.
The incident, caught on CCTV, showed a side of Dane that many fear, the brutal enforcer unleashing a flurry of punches in a crowded public space.
The aftermath of that fight revealed the complex web of loyalties and enmities in the bikie world. Nick Martin, a Rebels bikie kingpin, was shot dead just 2 weeks later at the Perth Motorplex. While Dane was never charged in connection with Martin's death, the timing raised eyebrows and fueled speculation. Dane's appearance has always been a topic of discussion. His extensive tattoos make him instantly recognizable, a walking billboard for the outlaw lifestyle. But it's not just the ink that draws attention. Dane is known for his love of bling, often seen wearing a gold chain worth an estimated $216,000 and a bracelet valued at $103,000.
In the middle of last year, I got a tip-off that this guy, Dane Brachovich, had bought gold from the Perth Mint. Now, the problem here is that Brachovich should have been a huge red flag to the Mint under financial tracking laws, as he's a former Sergeant of Arms for the Hells Angels, and he's also got a really well-documented history of assault and drug offences. Now, Brachovich isn't a member anymore of a bikie gang, and we're not suggesting the source of his money is illegal, but the MID should have asked him about where this money came from, and they didn't do that. Brachovich told us all they asked for was his driver's licence. Now, we've discovered really big holes in the Perth Mint's anti-money laundering defences. This means it could have potentially far shadier customers, including international terrorists, drug cartels and despots. Criminals love using gold to launder money because it can be melted down, it can be moved easily, and it's really, really hard to trace. And that could cost taxpayers millions, if not billions of dollars.
Add to that 8 16-karat gold rings, which Dane has referred to as his legal knuckle dusters, and you have a man who clearly enjoys displaying his wealth. This ostentatious display has often put Dane at odds with law enforcement. In April 2022, WA Police Commissioner Chris Dawson publicly criticized Dane for wearing disrespectful clothing during a court appearance.
An ex-Hells Angels bikie has detailed his bitter dumping from the gang while fighting anti-insignia charges in court. Dane Brachovich claims he wouldn't be caught dead in club colours, and the T-shirt in question is a fake.
He's without a doubt one of Perth's most recognisable bikies, but Dane Brachovich claims this is a case of mistaken identity. The latest to stand trial fighting anti-insignia charges, the former Hells Angel denying he publicly flaunted a club T-shirt in Ascot in January and 2 gang tattoos at Belmont Forum a week later. How do you think it went in there today? Both incidents allegedly witnessed by police and caught on camera, but the dumped enforcer claims he wouldn't be seen dead in club colours, telling a magistrate he'd already been expelled over the phone for bashing the president, tossing his clothes in a good Sammy's bin when no one came to collect them. Are you still upset about the way you were dumped from the club?
Dane had shown up in a black Gucci cap, designer sunglasses, chunky gold jewelry, and a jersey emblazoned with the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club initials. It was a clear message. Despite his expulsion from the club, Dane was not backing down from his identity as a bikie. So, who is the real Dane Brachovich? A reformed man trying to go straight, or a dangerous criminal playing a long game? The jury's still out, and the verdict could be life-changing or life-ending. What does the future hold for Dane Brachovich? It's the million-dollar question, and one that even Dane might not have the answer to. He claims he's out of the game now. No more gangs, just property management and a quiet life. But in the world of outlaw motorcycle gangs, can you ever really leave? The BIKER world has a long memory and little forgiveness. Enemies lurk in the shadows, waiting and planning. Dane knows this all too well, always looking over his shoulder, always ready for the next threat. Will his past finally catch up with him? Probably. The real questions are when and how. But if there's one thing we know about Dane Brachovich, it's that he's tough, a survivor, a fighter. He's beaten the odds before, cheated death more than once. Can he do it again? Only time will tell. In the meantime, Dane lives, breathes, and watches, because in his world, it's never over, not by a long shot. So keep your eyes open and your ears to the ground, because Dane Brachovich's story is far from over, and the next chapter, it could be explosive, very explosive. Stay tuned, folks. Stay very tuned.
Several people tied to the Hells Angels.
Investigators say members of the Hells Angels motorcycle gang.
A few members of the Hells Angels are hiding the suspect that they're looking for the founder of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club.
Discover the true essence of camaraderie and loyalty. The Hells Angels, a motorbike club renowned for its fame and notoriety, spans across 32 countries worldwide, inspiring countless myths, films, and songs. But amidst the intrigue, what lies at the core? We invite you into the inner workings of this club, unveiling its structure, activities, and the realities of everyday life for a Hells Angels member. The Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, originally established over 70 years ago in the USA, emerged as a counter-movement against the exclusive nature of motorbike clubs, catering solely to the elite. They envisioned a club for the common man, primarily embracing ex-soldiers yearning for the brotherhood they once shared during the Second World War. Today, these values of brotherhood and unity continue to thrive within the Hells Angels, an institution that has endured over decades. Together, they embark on exhilarating rides, revel in spirited celebrations, and often gather at their clubhouses to forge unforgettable evenings. Contrary to the perception one might hold of such a community, originally formed for the pursuit of enjoyment, the Hells Angels operate under a steadfast hierarchical structure. The daily life of a Hells Angels member is imbued with diverse responsibilities, contingent upon their status within the organization.
Here I must say, it's crucial to understand that you can't simply stroll up to your neighborhood Hells Angels chapter, give a little knock on the door, and expect a VIP invitation. These bikers are all about exclusivity, handpicking only those who truly meet their standards to ride alongside them. So remember, joining their club isn't a walk in the park. It's more like a rigorous journey through a gauntlet of selection criteria where only the worthy earn their stripes.
It is important to note that joining the club does not immediately grant full membership. Prospective members must first establish close relationships with existing members, enduring observation over an extended period to ascertain their ability to uphold the group's standards and code of conduct. The key attributes sought after are resilience, maturity, and unwavering discipline. To become a Hells Angels member, one must have a valid driver's license, a motorcycle over 750 cc, and the right combination of personal qualities. It is said the club excludes child molesters and people who have applied to become police or prison officers, and rightfully so. Once selected as a candidate, an individual assumes a hang-around status for an approximate duration of 3 months. As a hang-around, you enter a realm where membership rights are yet to be bestowed upon you. Nevertheless, you are granted access to the club premises, allowing you to immerse yourself in the club's atmosphere. During this phase, you undertake humble tasks that contribute to the functioning of the club, such as cleaning the clubhouse or tending to the refueling needs of fellow members' motorbikes. It is through these endeavors that individuals can demonstrate their commitment and progress to the next stage, Prospect. Prospects serve as probationary members, subjected to a year-long assessment period to determine their worthiness for full membership. Although they are granted participation in group motorbike tours and club events, prospects remain situated lower in the hierarchy compared to established members. It is during this juncture that personal growth and shared experiences within the club transpire, allowing prospects to ascertain their capability to represent the club's values to the outside world. Only once an individual has internalized all the rules and proven their mettle as a prospect can they ascend to the coveted status of a full member. Surprisingly, certain prohibitions exist within the Hells Angels that may defy initial expectations. For instance, Hells Angels are generally not permitted to consume alcohol, with a few exceptions, and drug use is unequivocally forbidden. Now, let's be honest here. This is maybe rule, but I think we all know that in reality things are handled a little different. Furthermore, strict injunctions dictate that members must not engage in communication with the police, even if one finds themselves entangled in criminal activities. Working for law enforcement agencies is strictly off-limits. These principles govern the street, and they persist unwaveringly. Yet, what precisely does the everyday life of a fully fledged Hells Angels member entail? And what is the essence of their engagement within the motorbike club? Contrary to the portrayal in numerous documentaries and reports surrounding the Hells Angels, one might be surprised to discover that the reality of life in most charters, the regional units of the Hells Angels, differs from popular assumptions. While the Hells Angels' reputation may suggest an association steeped in criminality, the core essence lies in the concept of community, a pivotal aspect cherished by the organization. Members of the Hells Angels continually unite to foster camaraderie, extend assistance, and often engage in charitable endeavors that benefit their community. An example of their compassion took place 6 years ago when a child was killed in a rampage. In a poignant act of solidarity, over 1,000 members of the motorcycle club attended the funeral to offer their condolences. The young victim, Jaden, a 9-year-old boy, happened to be the stepson of a Bandidos member. The Hells Angels put aside the dispute with the Bandidos at this point and showed solidarity with their biker brothers in other colors. Additionally, the club frequently organizes charity rides, where both members and sponsors contribute participation fees that are then donated to noble causes. Nevertheless, finding recipients for these donations sometimes proves challenging, as not everyone is willing to accept funds from the Hells Angels. Such hesitance is not entirely unfounded, for within certain Hells Angels charters, reports of illicit activities have surfaced. Former member Kazra Zagaran, who disassociated himself from the Hells Angels in Berlin, revealed in an interview that certain charters operate akin to Mafia gangs. Zagaran, who initially joined the motorbike club while working in security, admitted to participating in a betting office robbery alongside 11 other Hells Angels, tragically resulting in the loss of a life. Subsequently, Zagaran severed ties with his former brethren and is currently enrolled in a witness protection program. Clashes with rival rocker gangs constitute another facet of the Hells Angels' everyday existence.
A turf war between rival motorcycle gangs broke out in a restaurant parking lot. It quickly became deadly, leaving behind a gruesome scene. 9 gang members killed, the families inside terrorized.
A frantic scene Friday night outside a Fall River bar. Video from witnesses shows fists flying, with one man swinging what appears to be a helmet in a chaotic brawl. In the end, police say a 39-year-old man from Oak Bluffs was shot and killed, with 2 others in stable condition.
Confrontations, sometimes escalating to the point of kidnapping or assaulting members of opposing gangs, are not uncommon. A former member recounted in an interview the occurrence of regular combat operations wherein criminal Hells Angels members aggressively targeted rival clubhouses or dismantled them entirely to exact revenge. Often, rivalries between these gangs stem from territorial invasions and conflicts arising from competing business ventures. It is vital to acknowledge, however, that each charter operates independently, and many Hells Angels members are fundamentally peaceful and devoted individuals who primarily joined the club for the sense of community it offers. Unfortunately, due to the prevalence of negative headlines, law enforcement agencies have intensified their scrutiny of individual charters. Consequently, the daily life of a Hells Angels member now entails navigating encounters with police searches, seizures, and even raids. Nevertheless, the police have substantial grounds for conducting searches, as the issues at hand are far from trivial. Engaging in drug sales barely scratches the surface. In more extreme cases, shootouts occur, pitting certain Hells Angels chapters against rival criminal organizations in a battle for dominance on the streets, in red light districts, drug trafficking, and entertainment zones. Gatherings of 80 to 100 men escalate into chaotic brawls, with batons swinging and gunshots ringing out. Despite several attempts, authorities have yet to achieve a comprehensive ban on the Hells Angels. As previously mentioned, this is primarily due to the fact that not all regional chapters of the biker club engage in criminal activities, and many members have no association with illegal behavior whatsoever. However, specific local chapters have faced repeated classifications as criminal organizations and subsequent bans. Complicating matters further for the authorities is the fact that the criminal Hells Angels chapters often maintain a facade of legality in their external operations. They may run registered bars, discos, security services, brothels, or tattoo studios, paying taxes and complying with trade regulations. The illicit activities occurring behind the scenes are often only exposed to the secretive biker community, who consider it a grave transgression to cooperate with the police. Insights into the true workings of these operations typically come from defectors who risk their lives by coming forward. It is rumored that the Hells Angels have placed bounties as high as €500,000 on such individuals, incentivizing their capture and elimination. Currently, the former leader of the German Hells Angels, Frank Hanebuth, is standing trial in Mallorca. Following a high-profile raid by the police, including a helicopter deployment on his German property, he sought refuge on the holiday island. Hanebuth faces charges related to coercion and involvement in forced prostitution as the leader of the Hells Angels Charter Spain. Previously, he held a prominent position as the most influential figure within the European Hells Angels for many years, overseeing numerous brothels, dance clubs, and cinemas across Germany. At times, he enjoyed a positive reputation in the media and society, being regarded as an upstanding Hells Angel. Brothers in crime, that was a quick peek into the fascinating life of the Hells Angels. If you've had any personal encounters or thoughts about them, I'd love to hear them in the comments. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you'll never miss out on our future videos exploring equally exciting topics. Thanks for tuning in, and I can't wait to see you again next time.
Some names were never meant to be whispered. They were meant to echo through engines and open highways. These are the stories of the men who ruled from the shadows, feared, respected, and remembered long after they were gone. Outlaws, enforcers, legends. This isn't just one story. This is the road they all built. First up, the story of a man whose name still echoes on every highway.